Hey everyone, I'm Chris Walker. Welcome to episode 5 of The Refinery. Today we have Anna Davis joining us. Hey Anna.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. And so you want to give us a little preview of who you are and what you do?
Oh, God. I guess we can address the elephant in the room about my self-label of startup addict. I'm hooked. I'm addicted. I think with every new startup I move into, I leave learning something new, which is quite counter to my first job in the Navy. So there's a huge amount of pros and cons to all of it. I think for me, the biggest thing is like, how do I keep growing? So that's basically where I'm at.
For sure. Now, so startup addict, like what was that path like? So from the Navy, that what happened from there?
Oh man, okay, Cliff Notes version. So I spent
Yeah.
5 years, I spent 5 years as a Navy medic. It was super cool. I did it right out of high school, kind of on a whim. A very strange thing to just do on a whim. I didn't come from a military background. It was great. Some of my best friends, I still have to this day from the military. After that, I moved into a military aerospace distributor. It seemed like a pretty natural segue out of the service into that. I did have a brief affair with the beauty industry for 5 years. Again, something I wanted to do on a whim. I didn't put too much thought into it. I was really good at it, but I kind of got bored after 5 years. And then after the military aerospace distributor, I just realized I need something new. And I had a friend who was kind of hopping on this, buzzwordy bandwagon of, oh, tech this, tech that. And having a sales background that started in the beauty industry, I was like, well, tech's not going anywhere, so I might as well look into that. And I cut my startup teeth at a startup in Oakland. I'm out over here on the West Coast. And it was really eye-opening. There was a lot of really cool things. I think anyone who's in the startup world really gets a rush from building things together and breaking things. And I think that was just the beginning of this addiction to startups, right? Because what
Hmm.
I found at the aerospace distributor was a lot of my colleagues had been there for 7, 10, 15 years. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially if you're passionate about something. But it's super easy to see where their growth had stagnated. And I wasn't trying to drink the Kool-Aid.
I know. So the first 5 years of my career, I worked at a billion-dollar holdings company. They owned a ton of different technology and engineering companies, and their goal was to grow profits 10% a year. And it was a very profitable, like one of the best companies on the FTSE 250. And so the time that I spent there, they were trying to make like very small incremental changes. A lot of the people that had been there for a long time. But what I learned there, I think, was really pivotal to how I moved to startups and high growth companies because that company had a path to a profitable business. And a lot of tech companies right now, I think, especially in the startup community, are building companies that may not ever become profitable. I think that we're starting to see that with the WeWorks and the Ubers of the world and people getting exposed. And I think we'll see a lot more of that. But yeah, I'm with you. When I made the move to I would call them a growth stage medical device company that had raised a lot of money, that were growing fast, that were heading toward an IPO, that my career changed, right? Right? And so, like, in the startups that you've either been at, or you always an employee or a consultant or always an employee?
Always an employee.
Okay. And how many? Six?
I just left my fifth one, I want to say.
Okay.
So I parted
Cool.
ways with amicably.
Yes.
But I mean, you
Yes. So
you
I
Sorry, good.
Go. I was going to say, so like, it's been 2 for me. The tenure there is significantly shorter.
Yeah.
I typically, right? And so why do you think that is? It's interesting to think about.
Yeah, I feel like in general, there's a shift for people who don't live within the startup ecosystem. They're moving away from, I guess this negative stigma of like job hoppers. So I think that's a good thing, but I feel like within the startup community, I think irrespective of the industry, the people who really thrive in this environment, we're all, maybe even to a fault, always chomping at the bit, like for more, for more. And I feel like if you're building a company, that's exactly who you want working for you. You know, you don't want someone who's gonna just set cruise control and sit there and clock in and clock out. You want someone that's super hungry to contribute, to the business. So I think with startups, it's just this hunger for more. I don't think that's a bad thing.
I was always hungry for business model innovation or product innovation or innovation in marketing or go-to-market strategy, or like we are here right now, and while we're doing this, there's clearly things that could get better. And some people will take the route of let's figure out how to make things 1% better. Let's figure out how to make these incremental improvements. And I'm way more interested in how do we completely change what we're doing that brings us from here to there in a lot quicker way. And typically, those changes also come with a lot more risk and pains, potentially. And so you have to be in the right environment that supports that type of innovation, or you're going to get your hand slapped.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a difference between taking calculated risks and being reckless. And I think a lot of people who are maybe either new to startups or just that sort of radical innovation, again, whatever industry you work in, they always seem to conflate, being calculated, taking those calculated risks, and conflating them with being reckless. And there's clearly a difference. It's going to be more painful, obviously, when you fall flat on your face, but I think that's kind of the fun in it. I came from my last startup, decided to start to pivot in a direction which, hey, more power to you, but wasn't exactly what I signed on for. And I think that's the beauty of a startup, right? Is that it's this organic thing, and it should change and shift and evolve, and that's fun for the right people. And for other people who, hey, I want stability too. My definition of stability just looks different than maybe yours.
Yeah.
And, the person, for example, that I worked with in the past. But I think that the more we learn, it's just easier to take those risks. You know what I mean? Because it's like this paralysis of not wanting to take risk, and just think of like how many times in our lives has that held us back.
People, I mean, even in companies that say that they're innovative, resist change if you really look deeply. No matter how you create a culture, of innovation and fail forward and a culture of experimentation, they're going to resist things. One of the first things that comes to mind for me is that I consistently see companies that need to see, before they try a new marketing channel or approach, need to see this like direct ROI. And I've been thinking so much about why we're like this now, and I think that it's because we're starting to basically apply sales principles, which are black and white, to marketing, which is very gray. And so if you do split marketing into black and white, you have performance marketing and you have everything else, brand and stuff like that. This is less measurable. And so it's pushing people all the way into the performance marketing thing where basically if you can't show attribution, then we're not going to do it. And so and it holds people back from doing the things that are most effective, right? The things that you can actually get attribution for, SEO, SEM. If you do paid social with a direct response conversion, you can get it. If you run an event and you scan their badge, if you do some landing page optimization, all that stuff, it's usually the last touch. Or if you track it to revenue, it doesn't work that well. And there's so much more going on. And I've been an easy example is like something like this, like long form video. I've been pushing a lot of my clients to like hire a videographer, pay somewhere between, depending on where you are, 60 to 120K, have a strong videographer and put out videos every day where you're going and interviewing your customers, industry experts in the market, prospects, people at conferences, whatever. Like that strategy can develop, and then use that video for all of these different channels. But people don't see an ROI with that, and I'm upfront. Like you're not going to see an ROI on long form video somewhere between 20 episodes and never if you suck at it, and you have the wrong strategy, right? So and so like what do you see in that? Because I took from the calculated risk piece, and you were talking more of a global business process. But if we move into marketing, like what was that whole rant mean to you? Like, have you seen it? What does it mean? What would you say?
I mean, I've definitely seen it, and I feel like I might have seen something that you touched on in my LinkedIn feed about attribution, and everyone wants that last touch attribution, right? I mean, everyone wants to ring the brass ring and say like, hey, that last touch was mine. Like the reason why we had this sale is because of X, Y, and Z, but some of these things are really hard to quantify, and I think especially when it comes to marketing, it's like, how do you quantify a story? Like what is the genesis of that story? Maybe I ran into so-and-so who knows so-and-so grabbing a cup of coffee. Like we just don't know. And I feel like the more we get into the minutia of this, like the more we lose focus on what our potential is. And I think there's a time and a place for performance metrics, right? There's a time and a place for those very black and white, if this, then that. But there's so much awesome gray area, I think, in marketing that people are really missing the forest for the trees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think back of like the big SaaS purchases that I've made over the past couple years, and none of them had to do with the display ad that they showed me or their blog post, top of the funnel blog post that they thought I was going to search for and find and then immediately like go and buy something. Like I think all of them were word of mouth actually. Like word of mouth or social with no attribution, where I saw it in a feed, made a mental note, and then like whatever how long my buying process was, went and converted. I just I'm not sure if people don't get that because, and I've been trying to get louder about this. Like I think that spending so much time on attribution, the reason people want to spend so much time on attribution is because tech vendors are pushing them to do it. It's propaganda. And I think that it takes you in the wrong direction often.
Yeah, I think it's also a means for people to justify their positions. If you can't say, well, I brought in so and so, it's a little harder to prove why you should be employed. I went through this with my last startup where I knew right away when I was starting to build out their sales processes, which they were starting from nothing, which is great. You really get to build it from the ground up. But I specifically said, this is the sales enablement software I want. We sent in a request, like we're hot to buy, as in the quarter's ending. We want to make this happen today so we can get the ball rolling on Monday. And I think and we closed obviously like that, right? But I think it's sad and I'm hoping that their team didn't do this, when they start, going to the respective corners to figure out, okay, well, who brought in that company.
Who cares? Yeah, and I think people need to use a lot more intuition. Yeah, a lot more intuition and a lot less math. If you do, and you need to have a cohesive strategy and ability to understand what things are working and what things aren't. And so I'm kind of pulling in two directions here, right? Because it's like no attribution, but know what stuff's working. But like we don't use an attribution tool, and I know what channels drive our revenue and the revenue for our clients because I do the work and I see the analytics and I see we run this channel. I see the Google Analytics data. I see the inbounds go up. We move the spend up. The inbounds keep going up. We know where it's coming from. Like except for AdWords, like there's really no channel where like with social, and that's why people I think do some of the things that I think are dumb, which are like let's run a lead gen ad form or a social ad that brings someone to a landing page so that we can convert them so we have their email so we know where they came from. But you're using a top of the funnel awareness channel for a bottom of the funnel conversion. So great, you got that lead, but if you actually track them to revenue, very few, if any, are actually going through that process because they're not ready to buy.
Right. Yeah, it's tricky.
So let's talk about content. Where do you want to start? Get us started. We'll put this one on you. Actually, you can start it.
Oh, I think in general, it's really nice that I've been seeing, at least on LinkedIn, and just in full disclosure, like I didn't really take LinkedIn seriously for the longest time. A couple years ago, someone was like, "Dude, you got to get on it," and I was like, "That's not a good enough reason." And then they give me more, and then it kind of started for me with like, okay, this is like, a digital or a virtual resume that someone can just see it and say, hey, I want to open a conversation. Okay, I can get behind that. And it wasn't until probably 6 or 9 months ago that I really started to take it seriously to actively make engagements on people's posts, because I'm more of a behind the scenes kind of person. Posting is not specifically for me, it's just not how I'm wired, but I love engaging with people, commenting, sparking dialogue. I really thrive on that, and I really thrive on just the amount that I'm learning. But I think as far as content is concerned, I think there's a fine line between educating someone in whatever content format that is, and then presenting the opportunity at the end, like, hey, if you need more information, if you need help with this, like, this is how you reach me, as opposed to content as some sort of bait and switch for the sale. I've had a long sales career. I don't like those tactics. Give me the information so I trust. Just give it to me, and I will be back because I can trust, because I don't feel like there's a catch. And as a salesperson, I'm on my heels the minute I feel like my spidey sense is, wait, there's an angle. You're not really trying to help me. You're just trying to push whatever you're saying.
I think everyone feels that. And I'm even against I delivered 1,000 characters of value in a LinkedIn post, and the last line is, and if you need help, you can text me. Like, you don't need a CTA and everything. If someone likes what you say and thinks that you can help them, they know where to find you. Like, I think it actually does harm to have that CTA in there because it degrades the value of everything you've done up front. And so, like, there's a couple things that I wanted to get into. One is the idea that, like, whether you're gating a LinkedIn post or gating a PDF or making someone put an email address into a video, these are all things that I did specifically in like 2016. If you wanted to, we made a 30-minute video. If you wanted to watch it, you got to put your email address in. And then we're going to take that email and we're going to send you in a nurture stream and blah, 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 blah. If you want the PDF, you're going to put your stuff in. And then if we have your email, then maybe an SDR is going to email you. And not because I I do believe that I don't think buyers are ready at that point for them to get the information, nor do they want it, nor do they ask for it. But I just looked at it logically at the data, like it doesn't work. Like people that you follow up on at that point don't close, they don't answer you. And so like I still see people, and I commented on something today with about gated content. Like I think people you need gated content to have numbers that say that their content did something.
Is that
Again,
why?
there's that justification of the role, right?
Is that why? Because like, just give it away. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah,
I don't know what else to say.
it's super frustrating. I mean, yeah, I've seen this topic a couple times from a couple different people. So I mean, it's obviously it's striking a nerve with people. We're tired of it. Obviously, most people are tired of it, but like it keeps happening, which is why we keep talking about it. And it's a big reason why I'm not signing up for what could be super valuable content, because
Exactly.
I just want the
I'm not
content.
converting on it anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, or I mean,
I'm not going to convert. What you're doing is you're creating friction from people actually seeing what you want them to see.
Yep. Exactly.
Why don't you just give it to them? Because your actual goal is for them to read it.
I mean, we could
That's
take
the
the
real
content
goal.
form a couple steps further, where it's like, okay, do I really need the phone number? Do I really need their address? Because we're trying to eliminate this friction, right? Where you're like, okay, well, just the first name and the last name and then the email address. And then that's like bare minimum for them to like want to sign up, like the least amount of friction. It's like, can we just throw it away already? Like, can we just be done with it? And what's even worse, it's like from someone in a former life who was the SDR, who'd have to reach out to people, maybe not necessarily on webinars, but for events that were being held. And it's like these lists, and then it's like, oh my God, they're an attendee. Like just because they signed up to go to our after party or whatever does not give me the right to ask them like this, you know? But it's how the event marketers justified what they were doing.
Yeah.
And it's just so completely backwards.
So what do you think about events?
I think if strategically done, I feel like less is more. If you could have one, maybe two really amazing events where they're thoughtful, the audience is curated, you know, it compels and inspires people to find a way to get on that list, there's going to be a lot of buzz around that, right? It's just like anything else, supply and demand. If I feel like, okay, it's so-and-so and they're throwing something, you know, it feels like every other month, then I don't really feel inspired to check it out, because it's probably the same thing. And I'll probably hear from so-and-so over drinks what it was about. Do you know what I mean? I feel like a really curated event, something that feels like you gotta really work to get into that, is a great way to, because it's FOMO, right? People don't want to be left out. So I think I don't have anything against events for events' sakes, or, you know, when companies, for example, maybe they travel down to LA and, you know, they're putting on this event, but it's not really an event, it's a glorified happy hour. And then now the SDRs are chasing them. And again, I speak from experience, because in a former life, I had to do this. It's disingenuous and people smell that. So why would you want to keep up with
anything in marketing? I think that the number one thing that we need to change our mindset around is that we're doing it for that person, not for us. If we're having an event, we're having an event to educate or inspire that person, not to have them sign up so that we can call them and sell them something. If we're going to create a PDF, we're creating the PDF so that they can learn to do their job better. It might help them do their job better with our product, but it's for them, not for us. Video, webinar, everything. That is, I've never said it like that before, but that's, I think, the difference between whether content works or not. Because it's whether or not you're actually trying to deliver value. There are enough PDFs out there that are behind a form that have a cool headline, and when you download it, it sucks, and an SDR calls you 5 minutes later, and you know what that does? that is brand negative. That the chances of me buying your product just went down by doing that. Let's talk about the things that companies do that are brand negative that they don't realize. This one could be cool. So there is a very large company based in San Francisco where they have top of the funnel content that I download off of Facebook, and 5 minutes later, their SDR calls me. And they won't leave me, and I go into a cadence and I get 11 touches about their CRM that I do not want right now, and it is brand negative, and we all know who I'm talking about. There are plenty of enterprise level companies that do cold outreach to me on LinkedIn where you can tell it's in a cadence and it's automated, and it's just so dumb. Note with the connection request, I accept the connection request, there's a time delay, and then you send me another note right afterwards with absolutely no context, and it almost
Matches the note that you sent. It almost matches the note that you just sent me. And what that's going to do is have me click on your profile and immediately remove the connection. And your chances of selling to me in the future just went to 0, as opposed to just being patient.
Yeah.
And I have a mental note. It's not just for the rep. It's not just about the rep's fault, but it's doing damage to the brand. That company is in my head, and I know who it is. And when it comes down to them and their competitors, it happened on a call the other day. There's a category of products I recommended someone other than that.
It's not all because of that touch, but there's something in there that subconsciously happens with people that I don't think we're able to quantify. Like not every display impression is a good impression. Not every brand interaction is positive. And I don't think that we know how to measure that.
Yeah, I mean, I would even take just the brand, like the hit on the brand reputation, specifically with like the bait and switch LinkedIn connections, a step further and say that I think it's really damaging for the rep. One thing that I've put my foot on in the past, and I don't think this is a surprise, you know, once you start kind of moving up the food chain and you get a title where people are going to take you more seriously, as opposed to if you were, you know, this title saying the exact same thing. It's never going to go away. It's fine. I don't have beef with that. What I'm saying is that I had to put my foot down when someone I was working with was like, you know, basically we want to take a similar strategy, you know, the one you're just ranting about, and use your profile to do it. And it's like, yeah, I'm not cool with that. I have a and, you know, while I appreciate that that's, you know, maybe a channel that you want to explore, you're not doing it with my profile, because when I've seen these people do this to me, unfortunately, the first thing I think of when I see their face is, ugh, like you're trying to pull one over on me. And I honestly don't channel that annoyance into the brand who's, you know, putting the rep in this position or the SDR in this position. I've imprinted this person's face and name, and it's now negative. So it's a shame, I think.
And it moves with you. It moves with you forever. Once you move on from that company where you tried to make that, you made a connection with me, you did that, I removed the connection. 5 years later, maybe you want to work at my company, maybe you have something that would really be good to sell me, and instead of creating that relationship over the past 5 years, which then allows you to sell me the $1 million deal when we get bigger, then you have no shot to do that because you were short-term focused. You didn't do the right things for the long term. So tell me.
That's on leadership, though. You know, I mean, it really is. And not every rep's in a position to put their foot down the way I did and say, I'm not cool with that. And luckily I did, because one of the people who ended up doing that had their personal profile banned on LinkedIn, and that could have been me. But you know, I don't play the short game.
Yeah. So you've been at a lot of startups. The the common path would be the way that I've seen it, and maybe it's different, but I don't think it would vary that much. Is basically once you have someone buy your product, like maybe you're at 100K ARR, and you get funding, or maybe you already had funding, that you hire a VP of sales, a CRO, or whatever it is, and then blah, blah amount of AEs and amount of SDRs, and you just go the predictable revenue path. Is that something that's still? I mean, I saw that at a startup. I see that at most startups that I talk to, actually. Like, is that the normal path?
I think that's
There's something
predictably the
different.
path,
I see what you did there.
right? I think it's not fair to make blanket statements like monkey see, monkey do, but I mean, kind of.
Yeah.
I really prefer a more lean strategy. Let's do as much as we can with as few people possible. You're going to get paid better. We're going to be able to figure out the nuts and bolts of what's working and what's not. I think people should just be a lot more conscious about how fast they scale, especially when there's
Well, yeah.
the round of funding, and I think a lot of that is maybe like scaling with such urgency is not the answer, but it just sounds sexier, like, oh, ABC company just got, their Series C, however many.
$50 million Series C, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And they celebrate that, but they lost $30 million the year before, and they have a 12-month runway because their burn keeps going up. So I love the lean approach. It's definitely not the path that a lot of people have decided to take, but I think that there's a shift going on where it used to be huge teams, raise a ton of money, work like so hard and grind and hustle, and people are making a transition and burn until you sell, to a model where it's lean, smart, a clear path to profitability as quickly as possible, and scaling when it's appropriate and how it's appropriate. I think, that's at least the position that I've taken, because as you see how this has changed over the past 5 years, you go into companies now and there's just waste everywhere. But it's specifically in the go-to-market model. It's specifically in the sales and marketing teams. Depending on the company, the way that I've seen it is it's mostly in the sales team. And so when you are basically my theory, or what I've seen, is you get in a place where you raise money, you need to grow, so you hire more salespeople, your revenue efficiency goes down, you grow to a point that's way lower than your goals, you need to raise more money, you need to hire more salespeople to get there. As you're doing this, you're stripping money out of product and success. And so as you do that, you slow down innovation to hit these things. And then if you're lucky, which is going to be less and less companies over time, I think, then you'll sell to someone else, and you'll basically be able to dump this huge problem on another company because you have no innovation in the pipeline, you're no longer differentiated, but you've managed to get to 50 million revenue, and you have a 7x valuation, you just sell it to someone else.
Yeah, I think, I completely agree with, at least in my experience, that the majority of my startups has been a super bloated sales team, an almost anorexic marketing team, if any, which is scary, because that's the hardest part of closing a deal, right? Is finding that. You could have 1,000 sales reps, but if no one's actually getting in front of the customer, like, who cares, Yeah, super bloated. I think a huge part of that too, and it's like, it just really chaps my, is just people are so afraid to disqualify these opportunities, especially when they're inbound, because one of the main arguments I always hear is like, oh, they're inbound, like, they're definitely interested.
It depends what you qualify inbound, right? So my definition of inbound is changing a lot. For me, an inbound is only someone that calls you, that emails you unsolicited or answers your marketing email or whatever, or fills out a form that says, I want a quote, I want a demo, or I want to talk to your rep. That's what an inbound is. The inbound definition of they signed up for this webinar but didn't attend, they went to this event that our trade show booth was at, that they did these 3 things that we can now lead score them at 90, so they're an MQL and we're going to pass them to sales. Those are not inbounds. Those are you pretending they're inbounds and going outbound.
Yeah, pretty much. Because there's no that latter group, there's no intent behind it, right? And I think that's such a simple concept that people are forgetting. Like, what's the buyer intent? Yeah, I would classify inbound the exact same way. And I mean, just opportunities in general, there just seems to, and I get it, like the quota looming over your head, you have these weekly stand-ups where the head of sales or whatever wants to know how everything's progressing, but it's like, I think reps need to work on finding their voices and being able to justifiably answer when someone says, well, why isn't this an opportunity? So-and-so came inbound, like, why aren't we working this deal? And to give an educated response, to why that's something we shouldn't waste our time on. I mean, we've heard this since forever, like, time is money, so the faster I can DQ someone out, the more the quicker I can move on to someone who's actually willing to spend money. I only have so many hours in the day.
Yeah, I think companies should start measuring time to loss, and the faster that you can do that is a good thing. There's no sense in getting and sending a proposal and committing the deal when you could have lost it at the discovery, right? Like, that's pretty much what you're saying. Another thing that I think that we haven't seen yet, but we will see, is that what I see right now is companies using Bambora or a different intent thing, and using that thing to not do marketing but to go outbound. And just because they have whatever signal doesn't mean that they want to talk to you. I think that we'll see that. I think that we'll see that play out too. People are not being conscious enough about how it feels to be the buyer. They only care about what they want to get. And so I think companies are, when we talk about quotas hanging over sales reps' heads, companies set their reps up to fail. They hire too many. They don't have the right marketing support. The revenue model, what they're doing is they're hiring reps to create growth, not to support growth, which is different. In 1998, you hired reps to grow. It's not really as direct of a correlation anymore. And so, yes, if you hire a rep, they're going to contribute revenue, but it's not going to be we double our headcount, we double our revenue. That's not how it works. But they project it that way. Okay, we're at 25 reps, and we're a $10 million company. And so if we do an expansion, we're going to cut everyone's territory in half, and all of a sudden we're magically going to double our revenue. But what happens is that you increase your revenue by like 1.3%, but you've doubled your burn. You've doubled your sales expense. You've increased your CAC, where there's just a more efficient way to do it. So I'm trying to get back to the point where I think companies are setting their reps up to fail because of that assumption that I think is wrong. And also, so they don't have the marketing support, and they're not giving reps what they need to be successful. They give them short-term goals instead of like the knowledge to truly add value and the time required in order to do it the right way.
Yeah, and
I know it's not a popular thing to say, but yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think a lot of reps are learning the hard way. I know I certainly have, where the company comes up with a quota, they hang it over your head, and there's really no explanation as to why that quota is what it is. I've asked before in the past. It wasn't met very well in a very positive light, because it wasn't a contrarian question. It was, I'm having a hard time understanding how I'm able to hit quota when, you know, this is what the deal sizes are, this is what the sales cycles look like, you know, this is what customer churn looks like. I think we almost need to get back kind of to, you know, metrics 101, and not these vanity metrics of, oh, well, it's a numbers game, and, you know, if we just double head, and if we double this and double that, then we'll double
if we
the
do
revenue.
double the demos, blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. I mean, in if I may, I would just even say for people, you know, getting into sales, especially in SaaS, or anything with a fairly scary, you know, quota that needs to be attained, is when you're qualifying them as a candidate. And I think a lot of people, especially when they're younger and they're not as confident, remember, you're interviewing them just as they're interviewing you. Like, you got to look at it that way, you know. You have some dignity, and don't be afraid to ask those tough questions, because if you're met with resistance or worse, that's the universe telling you that you're not supposed to be there. So I would ask questions like, what is quota, and do you mind sharing how you guys arrived at those numbers? That is going to be
what percentage of your reps right now hit that?
Right, because there's a difference between OTE and what reps are actually.
What you actually make.
Yep. But again, you know, this is insight. These are lessons learned. It's something that we can pass on to people who don't know what they don't know. It's responsibility.
Top rep makes 300K.
The recruiter comes in, top rep makes 300K, but what they don't tell you is the rep in the 40th percentile makes 78 grand. And then they're getting, it's a big delta. Yep. So I think that one we could go on forever, but if you create a lean, agile team that's flexible, you don't get stuck with those problems. Because once you have the big team, there's no going back. The option is, we have 40 reps, we're blah, 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 blah. Like, if you cut the team in half, your revenue is probably going to go down. I don't know by how much. And your investors are not going to tolerate that. So there's only one way to go. It's like, I've seen companies where it's clear the model isn't going to work. It's clear that they're burning too much cash and they're not going to get to the ending that they want. But it's like you're driving, if you're in the middle of the ocean and you're in a boat and you're driving up a wave and you can't turn back. The only options are, we're going to try and drive over this wave, or the wave's going to crush us, but we can't turn around. And so a lot of companies are like going up the wave, and we'll see if they make it over. I don't know when it's gonna, when it's all going to fall, but we are starting to see that happen at a big scale. And I think that the ones that happen on a small scale just don't get the publicity. They just kind of fail quietly. But a lot of companies are going to fail that way, especially if we see a downturn in this wonderful economy.
Yeah, I mean, all good things must end, right? And I don't think that's necessarily a negative. It's probably a reality check that a lot of people need, whether it's personally, professionally. I mean, you know, to our point of running a lean organization, not even just a sales or marketing team, you know, until you have that machine well-oiled, running like a beast, like, do not proceed, do not collect $200. You know what I mean? Like, kill it where you're at, and then maybe revisit that. It's simple, but it's really hard to execute for some reason. I think especially in hubs where I'm at, you know, in the Bay Area, you're over, you know, in Boston, like there's a lot of pressure for results at any cost. But I mean, sometimes you got to take the tortoise and the hare approach, you know. And I think it's the tortoises that are going to come out on top. It's not as sexy.
I love
that. I love it. So let's transition to the round that the part of the conversation that I didn't tell you about. We like to call it the lightning round. And so I'm going to ask you some questions, and you just fire back the first thing that comes to mind. The number one skill or trait of a salesperson, B2B salesperson.
Empathy.
The biggest challenge for marketers in 2020.
Authenticity.
The number one line item on a marketing budget to cut in 2020.
I don't know, blogs for the sake of blogs.
Yeah, basic blogs. The number one place that people aren't doing marketing that they should be today.
Probably LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least if they're doing it, to really invest in it.
Yeah, and to do it with the right strategy.
Yes.
Yes.
No fake connection requests.
Juice or beer?
Juice.
Me too. I think that's it. That's all I got for the lightning round. I went for a while.
So any last thoughts, debates, things that you got on your mind that we should chat about?
I'm ready for anything.
I think I just want to say from me to you, I really love your candor on the feed. I think it's really hard to find someone who doesn't flip-flop or is wishy-washy, or maybe, you know, comments as one persona and then flips their head and comments as another persona. I think there's so much opportunity for people like me to learn from, you know, people like you, and vice versa, just to learn off of each other. But there's so much inconsistency. It's really hard to know when someone's being authentic, and that kind of circles back to like the marketing thing, you know, like, if anything, be consistent. You know, if you're going to be that ray of sunshine and positivity and this and that, and I'm not dogging that, like, cool, do that, like, but like, do it. You know what I mean? If you're going to be the kind of person who maybe strikes a nerve with people, but has a reason why they're doing it, and is not just, you know, trying to veil being a jerk with being provocative. I love to do air quotes, I know.
I know, me too.
Like
it.
You know, own it, right? With the head bob too.
Yeah.
I think there's so much opportunity for us to be learning on LinkedIn, but just like sales, just like marketing, we don't want to feel like we're being taken for a ride. Just be you, show up, and stop it with the gated forms. You know?
Stop it with the gated forms. And I think a big mistake on LinkedIn that people are making right now is they're outsourcing their LinkedIn. How do you outsource yourself? And then I get messages a lot, actually, and we'll bring this to the forefront because I haven't talked about it before. Messages a lot that are like, hey man, do you have a job? Because it seems like all you do is spend your time on LinkedIn commenting and posting. And I actually don't respond to them, but what I would say is, one, you clearly don't get it. And two would be that if I'm doing it, then there must be something going on that's working. Like if I wouldn't be doing it at this level if it wasn't working. The third thing is, unlike you, Steve, who spends 5 minutes on LinkedIn sending spam messages to people and then goes back to your desk and does bullshit stuff all day. I spend 10 minutes on LinkedIn when I'm in an Uber. When I'm walking my dog, I'm replying to comments. I squeeze it in. I find it's worth it while you waste your time. And I work more than you. And so, I mean, like, if you want value out of the platform, you have to invest in it.
Yes, agreed.
You
And
have
not the
to
way
invest
Steve
in it.
does.
And not the way Steve does. You suck,
I-
Steve.
I just don't even get that. Like, why would you even approach it that way? I guess just I can't wrap my head around it because I'm not wired that way. You know, like number one,
Yeah.
if that ain't the pot calling the kettle black, I don't know what is. Like, what are you doing all day?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We'll just
Like,
say Steve.
you're saying cold calls and doing cold emails all day, and I'm bringing people value and creating way more business than you are doing your bullshit stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, and it kind of goes back to the whole thing where it's like, you know, taking hits on reputation. It's like, you know, especially depending on the industry, this is a very small world. I mean, and even if you're not in the same industry, there are connections where in your head, you're just like, I don't even know why you guys would be connected, but you are connected. You know what I mean? So why would you want to burn a bridge? Do you know what I mean? Like and that's fine. He's allowed to feel that way. Like there's obviously something in him that is compelling him to even think that way. And it's not our job to convince him otherwise because he's already made up his mind. But why would you want to risk tarnishing your personal brand or reputation when God only knows what the next 5 years are going to look like?
Mm-hmm. And I actually don't take, I don't take any offense to it, but I want people to understand that, because if people message me about it, a lot of people are thinking about it. And so, yes, I run a fast-growing company. I do spend 2 or 3 hours a day on LinkedIn because we don't have a sales team. We don't do outbound. It works better. And both of those things combined, running a company and doing that, create a fast growth, profitable, lean business that attracts the right clients.
Yeah. I mean,
Good
it's
stuff.
it's a great channel. People like that just need to work on their delivery. You know, because I see what's going on behind the question, but that's not how you ask it. A better way could be, hey, Chris, I see you posting what seems to be multiple times a day. Do you have any tips on how you squeeze or how you make time for LinkedIn? Like, you're a CEO, you gotta be busy, right? I'm looking to, you know, scale my efforts. Could you help me out? Like, there's a way to do it, and it's not Steve's way, you know?
Mm-hmm. Cool. That was fun.
I agree.
We just crushed it for an hour.
Yay.